So I'll try to carry on. And Mr. Moore, will you call the roll?
Yes, I will. Ms. Parker, Ms. Kinzer,
Present.
Ms. Martin, Mr. Pennings.
Here.
I am present. Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Bates, Mr. Beaver, Ms. Powers, Ms. Morency, Mr. Dudley. We have enough to have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum, thanks. Let's stand and have our Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we also always want to remind you of our mission. Don't have it written there, but we do have one. The agenda is before you. Is there any additions or is there a motion to accept? All right, there's a motion by Ms. Morency and a second by Mr. Pennings. Any discussion? Then let's vote. Okay, and that motion passed. We have recognitions and announcements. The Spring Hill High School Read to Be Ready Summer Camp presentation.
There we go. Okay. My name is Debbie Alcorn, and I'm the Family Consumer Science teacher at Spring Hill. And we want to thank you for letting us be here today to highlight what our students did this summer. I'm here with Ms. Lori K. Burns, who together was my cohort with 3 other teachers that helped do day camp this year. Before I let the kids tell you about it, we're going to show you a little glimpse into what it was about this summer. So if Tommy will take it away, here is our Kids Camp 2018.
how do I do it? Okay. Is it on? Okay, it's on. It's working. It's fine. It's fine. So I'm going to say that again. This was our 4th year during the camp, and we had 70 campers come this year. And we offered 5 classes. So we had a cooking class, which was taught by FCCLA. We had a theater class, an art class, a STEM class, and a health science class.
Also, this is one of our biggest fundraisers for all of our campus clubs, pretty much. And also, we actually did it the first week of June, Monday through Thursday, sorry.
And on the last day, we have all the families come in and they get sample of the cookies that cooking class made. They watch the video. Art class usually has some sculptures, and everyone just has a great time.
We just appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this, to bring back and give back to our community. Our students really have an amazing leadership capability by running these camps. The teachers are there. We plan ahead of time, of course, but our students really take the reins and lead these young people. And I think what better example than having teens become leaders, and then these young people can relate to them so well, and it is something that they can put down later on their college resumes, that they were able to do this type of adventure.
Thank you so much. I'm so impressed, and the music was perfect. Go ahead. Excuse me.
I have to give one more plug.
Oh, yeah.
When Mrs. Burns and I started this 4 years ago, we had a 5-year vision, okay? This May 2019 is our 5th year vision. This is where we're going. We've grown it to 5 classes as of last year. We're adding 3 more. We're doing 8 classes next year. Each camper gets the opportunity to pick 2 classes for the morning, 2 for the afternoon. So they're going to get 4 classes in this next time to show even more interest in a lot of other areas. And we're bringing in some diversity with it too. So we're continuing. So thank you for letting us be here.
Well, thank you again. Next is the Murray County Education Association.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we greet you again this time of the month. I realize that tomorrow night you're going to be dealing pretty much focused on the area of the budget crisis, but that's not the time when I speak, so I wanted to share with you some concerns. I think you know this has caused exceeding despair among our teachers, and I felt it best for our employees, not just teachers, employees to share their own concerns better than I can. And so I asked for comments and from people that weren't in MCA as well. And in no particular order of importance, I'm just going to read some of these to you. Teachers that I know want textbooks. K through 2 needs everything. They have nothing. No books, no workbooks, nothing. Those teachers are literally creating everything they use from scratch and buying it themselves. The state gave us the raise. How can the county schools take it? I'm a single mom with 3 kids, and feeding them lunch alone is already more than I can afford. I make too much money to qualify for assistance. My kids will be eating peanut butter and jelly every day. Teachers are creating their own stuff on a constant basis, buying programs off teacher pay teacher and using antiquated materials. This is beyond ridiculous. I've never been this disappointed returning to work. So central office requires big salaries to retain good people, while teachers are possibly going to be laid off and or to receive drastic pay cuts. The budget is a mess. Test scores aren't rising, although the testing is pretty messed up too. We are being told there are too many teachers. I don't see how any of this helps students. Teacher morale is going to be hard to keep up when we are starting the new year like this. This is not how I want to start my school year, wondering what's going to be cut. I'm truly saddened by all this. We should not have to choose between the 2% raise or benefits. We already make a lot less than a lot of other nearby counties. Pay is what we deserve, or you're going to see a mass exodus. How can any educator feel valued in this environment? We must fight year-round, every year. I wonder how many workers in America have to purchase 98% of their own supplies in order to do their job. If teachers don't get a raise, no one else in this county needs one. It is not our fault that budgeting and spending has been out of control, so why on earth should we be expected to rectify the problem? Both my husband and I will have to get second jobs. We won't be able to feed our family. And then somebody, ironically, a little bit later said, I think most teachers have 2 jobs. And then one, will this fiasco ever end? And then one that somebody handed me. The mistakes made in this county were not made by teachers, yet we are the ones who are paying for the mistakes by bearing the brunt of this budget fiasco and financial mismanagement through lost positions, discontinued programs, and threats to retirement, sick leave, medical insurance. With all due respect, this is not the golden era that Dr. Marzak that you promised May 16th. I wish it were, and I hope things get better, but right now there's a lot of despair out there. I thank you for the time as always, and as always, school board, I thank you for the service that you give us every year. And I want to thank those that have served and are stepping down from the board. I know Ms. Powers won't be here. Mr. Moore, we don't know. And Ms. Martin. So thank you for the service you provide. And Mr. Bates. We've had a lot of things that we've done together. We don't always agree, but as always, I will thank you for your service. It's a hard job. It's not one I'd want to do, so thank you for your service. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Mr. Humner. Of course, tomorrow night we'll focus all on the budget as well, have discussion and call special meeting about that. Public delegations, will you see if there's anyone signed up to speak? One. Well, let me see. This looks like a familiar name. Eric Pravetti. Now. You're the only one, it looks like, and you put yourself down here twice. Does that mean you want 10 minutes?
Well, I didn't know if you did it. I mean, my items are specific to the agenda items, and I didn't know if you would take those at those a time, or if you wanted it now, that's fine also. But
I think that 5 minutes is what we generally give. You're speaking to 2 items?
2 items, yes, ma'am.
Well, I think we can be a little flexible. I have forgotten my phone, so I can't time you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Pravetti. I'm a 2nd District County Commissioner in Columbia. I live at 101 Casey Valley Drive here in Columbia. 2 of the items in particular that I wanted to discuss was, of course, we're having issues with the budget, and so and the county commission can't tell you what to do with the budget when you get it, but as a citizen, I can sit here and say, I have a problem with this and I have a problem with that. Item 7, let me pull it back up here. Item 7.12, discussion of working with Rebecca McFarland. You have an item here that is going to be some counseling sessions that you are looking at that I think that ought not be spent at this time, especially with there an election coming up and part of this board not coming back after this next month. So I think that that's several $1,000s that could be used to put toward a teacher's salary. So that's my 2 cents worth on that, and I think that should come at another time. The other item in particular is item 9.2.2, bid 19-003-IN TI-84 calculators. What you have before you is the recommendation of a purchase of 390 Texas Instruments TI-84 calculators. They're under a bid with Howard Technologies, and they come out to $53,391. Let me grab my notes. That divides out to $136.9 per calculator. That's a lot of money for calculators. If you Google Walmart, the exact same calculator is for sale for $88. At 390 units, that's $34,320. A savings of $19,071. This is the issue that I've got with central office. This is the issue I have got that I have had for years, is that every time you see the word contract, you think, okay, we can just buy it and not do the due diligence. That's half a year's salary for a teacher right there. And so, you know, as a citizen, I'm saying, don't buy these calculators from Howard at that contract price. You can get them at Walmart for $88. A TI-84 calculator. I can email you the links. You can get them, you know, from Amazon.com, anywhere. And, you know, your tax-exempt certificate works anywhere you go in this county, so Walmart will take it. That's pretty much all I have to say, is that it's these items, it's these purchases, it's these things that I don't think due diligence is being done at central office. And how many more items like this go through the cracks? This is why I was a supporter of the Private Act to do this. Because I just think that there's just so much money getting through the cracks here, and that $19,071 will pay half of a teacher's salary. That's pretty much all I have to say, and I do appreciate your time, and I know it's a tough job, and we've got hours, and I look forward to working with you guys in the next, the next crew that comes along in a month. But that's my 2 cents worth tonight, and I do appreciate you listening to me. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gravetti. And we're
Madam Chair.
open to any of those kinds of suggestions. Okay, Dr. Marzak? Mr. Bates, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Kinzer. Mr. Ravetti, I think the board, we had some similar questions about these calculators at our work session. My understanding is, and maybe staff, if staff is present, can give some input. My understanding, this is federal funds. This is under a title program that central office has available, certain amount of federal funds. And I agree with you, still need to watch the pennies on that, and there's legitimate questions about, how to stretch out that funding. But this is a different type of funding that we're looking at there. But it is something that some of the board members...
I don't care what the funding source is, that much money. I mean, so the government, so it's coming out of this wallet. You're still buying X product. The government did not say you had to buy it from Howard Technologies. You should still be doing the due diligence. It's coming down rain. I hope your windows are shut. I hope you're doing your due diligence.
Well,
it doesn't matter what the funding source is.
And your point is well taken, Mr. Ravetti. I just don't want people to have a misunderstanding that we can use this $50,000 for teacher salaries. This is dedicated funded for a specific purpose, that there's a lot of title regulations and things like that as to what the funding can be
So
used
still,
for.
the savings of $19,000 will buy you that many more calculators for that many more students.
And I agree with you. I think that's a legitimate point, and I agree.
So that's still a valid point, that the diligence is not being done to get the best price of the taxpayers' dollars, because federal funds is still my tax dollars. It's still coming out of my paycheck, so it's still my tax dollars. So whether it's out of this pocket, my jeans pocket, or Donald Trump's pocket, whatever, the best price should be gotten for whatever we purchase. Thank you.
No argument there. Thank you, Mr. Ravetti.
Dr. Marzak?
Okay, Mr. Pravetti, 2 things. The first off, the one from Ms. McFarland, those are recommendations that if we wanted to continue to work with her, we're going to be utilizing our free half day. So there's not going to be any, there's no money incurred, because that's something the board already paid for last year. Stan, if you wouldn't mind indulging me for a second. Federal funds and purchasing. I know this is coming off the buy board cooperative. There's certain things in certain places, and Mr. Gaines, you're there too. There's certain places we can spend federal funds, and there's certain that we can't. Mr. Gaines or Mr. Breeden, can you address this?
As you know, as part of Central High School, the first time this year was eligible for Title I funds. Mm-hmm. Those are additional funds because of their poverty rate. The school met as a committee, and they decided that they would make this purchase. Mm-hmm. Once they made this purchase, we do have to do this. We had the same purchasing requirements as everybody else. They have to get 3 bids. When we looked at the Texas, I'm thinking the type of calculator he's getting has certain features, and that's what was recommended on the buy board purchasing, and that was the buy board purchasing agreement. That's what we use. Mm-hmm. I mean, we wouldn't go make a purchase under anything else. I mean, we'd be happy to look at the specs on that.
TI-84 is a TI-84.
Well, I'd have to I'd have to dig deeper into that, because I think there's some other features and maybe,
Well, the Walmart is actually a TI and 4 Plus.
right. Looking at what the school wanted and what Mr. White wanted for his particular school, what kind of features they wanted. I'm sure they looked into that and then sent that request to the technology department. They went with, our buy board purchase to look to see if that item was on there. So generally, if it's on that buy board purchasing agreement, that's what we would go with, because those are already negotiated prices.
Mr. Bates?
I was just going to say, Ms. Ravetti, I do appreciate you bringing this to our attention. This is something that come up during the work session that other board members have some questions about, and this is why it's on this part of the agenda rather than the consent agenda. So there'll be some additional discussion
I mean,
on that.
and I did the purchasing for the schools for years, and I know about the fundings and what you can do. That much of a difference in price, it's still,
So again,
yes,
yes,
money is money, and the government don't, there's
if
not
board
a
members have,
restriction. Yeah,
yes, if board members have similar questions.
thank you.
Okay, it's staff reporting. Is there anything there? Okay. Next is the consent items. Are there any of those we want to pull out, or is there a motion to accept? Motion, there's a motion made to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moore. The motion was made by Mr. Dudley. Any questions, comments? Then let's vote. Okay, that motion did pass. Under new business, we have instruction. Is there anything that we need to discuss there? Finance, policies, final adoption. Nothing there. Zoning and facilities. Okay, moving on. In other business, excuse me. All right. I'm.
And Ms. Kinzer, I appreciate that. There is one item that was not moved. I'm sorry, two items that were not moved under zoning and facilities to the consent because additional questions. The first of those has to do with the Central High School budget update. As we shared with you at the last meeting, and I'll have to, right now, as the way the project stands, with the work that was originally contracted for completed, there is $947,333.39 that is remaining in the funds that were allocated for that project. There was a discussion at the work session at which the board directed Mr. White, the principal, Central High School, to go back and gather some information. He also, we have Jamie Spencer of Hewlett Spencer here, who's done some pricing for that as was requested, and so I think Mr. White has a presentation for you at this time.
Okay, Mr. White?
Good evening. Okay, we're good. You asked me 2 weeks ago to come back with or I asked for your permission to come back 2 weeks ago for a proposal for the leftover money from the building of Central High School. So we met with several people, several coaches and so forth on the best way to spend those remaining funds, and this is what we came up with. As you can see now, this is a partnership with Murray County Park, okay? Because what you have asked for was a track soccer option and a soccer option. So both of those items would be put in the Murray County Park. It's going to benefit 200 plus students easy. Their GPA or average GPA for those 200 kids is a 3.1, which is obviously very high. Safety has always been a big concern about teenagers getting in the car and traveling down the road and traveling to different parts of our community to practice. Teenagers driving with several teenagers in the car is obviously not a good thing. The track obviously benefits the entire community because anybody could go into that area and walk that track if they wanted to. And also the soccer field could as well benefit the community. There's the layout. That is option number 1. That is the track soccer field. I don't know all the details to it. Mr. Wynn-Lindsay or Mr. Spencer could obviously help us if we need to. I do know this, that the soccer field that's being proposed right there is a little narrow than a typical soccer field or a championship field might be, but you can still play district matches, district tournaments, region tournaments, and so forth. If you had to play a state championship game, it would not be regulation. We don't plan on playing state championship games at Central. We do, but state championship games are played in Murfreesboro on legal fields. Other than that, everything is well within what it needs to be. There's the cost of the track and field. Now remember now, you only have $900,000 to begin with, okay? So that cost came out to $1.4 million for the track and soccer complex. Option 2 is just a soccer field. And you can see the location that it would be. The cost of that soccer field, we can do that soccer field for $550,000. We could also, based on whatever's left over, our softball team does not have a scoreboard. Mind you, that softball field was built by Columbia Central High School and its family and friends several years ago. In fact, I don't believe there were any funds that came from the Board of Education at that time. Also, the tennis courts, those of you who've seen the tennis courts at Central High School, are definitely out of date, dilapidated. So to renovate those tennis courts would be $186,000. And obviously that would come from the $900,000 that we're talking about. Questions?
Any questions, comments? You're obviously not asking us for the 1.4, so, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, are you asking us to?
We have $900,000 left over.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And Mr. White understands, and we understand that we're not looking for another, what is that, $500,000?
Okay.
We're looking to do more than just build a soccer field, though, as you can see.
Yes.
We can take a big bite into that apple that we talked about by helping softball out, helping tennis out, helping soccer out. So our facilities at Central High School would obviously get much better than they are right now. We currently just have what, basketball, volleyball, of course, on campus. They're in gyms. We always build gyms. Mm-hmm. We have baseball and softball on campus. Other than that, all our other extracurricular activities or TLSAA sports are off campus that we have to travel to.
Just one question, and then Mr. Dudley has
Yes,
a
ma'am.
comment. With it being a campus school with Whitthorne right there,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
even Baker has some track, could they utilize this
Of course
as
they
well?
could.
Right.
Of course they could. Yes, ma'am.
And what about Cox and some of those?
We would get Cox involved as well.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Dudley?
Because I guess we're a year away from Cox being all of Central High School. So yes, we definitely would.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is a question for Mr. Woodward. Being that some of the facilities that Mr. White has proposed are off campus, can we use those funds for off-campus projects? I mean, I know we can for the ones that are on Spring Hill, our Columbia High School property, but technically the park is not school system property. So are we allowed to use any of that $900,000 for off-site stuff?
Mr. Breeden and I talked about this a bit this morning. I think you can. I think it makes it a little bit more difficult from a paperwork standpoint because we've got to get some agreements in place with the property owner, obviously, but it's adjacent to Central High School, will benefit Central High School. I think you could do it. I don't see a reason why you couldn't. I think it adds some extra steps.
How much of what, excuse me, Mr. Pennings?
Have you talked to the, excuse me, have you talked to the county at all? Because the football field is county property. And right now, we have to pay the county every time we use it, correct?
Yes, sir, we do. Any sport or any event that we have at the county field, we do have to give a percentage back to help maintain that facility. Let me remind you that new lights, new fencing, new bathrooms are being installed as we speak, and the Board of Education did not pay a dime for that. They came from the county.
Well, that's a county park. They should
Yes,
keep
sir.
up their park.
And it'll be extremely nice.
I just have a problem with spending money returfing a county field and then having the county charge us to use it when we have a football game. I mean, it just seems to me.
Well, to maintain that field, and again, I don't know all the dollar amounts, but it takes quite a bit of money to maintain that field. It does. And everything the park, the money that we give the park, I'm sure deep down they help us out quite a bit with that. So, you know, if we had the stadium to ourselves, we wouldn't have the money to put in the lights. We wouldn't have the money to put up nice new fencing or new restrooms and so forth. That's money we would have to raise or we'd have to ask you for. So we're thankful that we had the ability to do that.
Well, they didn't have the money to put up a new scoreboard either, and they got it thanks to Parks.
We did, and we appreciate Parks doing that.
I haven't seen the county, the new restrooms that are the first thing that I've seen improvement in that facility since I've been going to the football games, which is a long time.
Yes, sir. Named State of the Field just a couple of 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Ms. Morency, did you get your light on? Okay.
There we go. Is it me?
Ms. Morency.
Okay. The problem I have with this is this $947,000 is supposed to go back to the county commission. That's the agreement that we made with them. And the way I look at it, if Murray County Parks and Rec wants to build a field there, then they should go to the county commission and ask for that money. That should be in their budget, not in our budget.
But you also understand we are strapped for land at Central High School. We cannot build, unlike the new high school in Spring Hill, where they'll have the space to be able to build all those things. And hopefully whoever's sitting on the board at that time will build everything that they need. We're just strapped for land, so we're thanking the county for giving us a chance to build something that our students and a lot of students in our community need.
Well, what I'm saying is this money, in my opinion, and what I'll be voting for, is this money to go back to the county commission. And if the county commission wants to put that money in the park, then that is their decision. That's between park and the county commission. But I think in good faith, this is their money. This isn't our money to spend.
Well, I think also, and again, I don't know enough of the logistics from the county and so forth, but that money was given to build Central High School, and we're not done. In my opinion, we're not done. Because to me, 3.5 years ago, there should have been that extra money to do those things. And many of us were told, no, don't worry, we'll wait till money's left over. Well, money's left over. We're not done.
Okay, well, there's a lot of other schools that would
Understand.
love to have that too.
Understand.
Well, I agree there are a lot of other schools would love to have this, and if the opportunity was such that we could do it at all the schools, I'd be absolutely 100% for it. First of all, the tennis courts are on school property.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is there any other part of this actually on school property? that you're proposing?
No, well, the
Only the
scoreboard,
tennis
the
court.
scoreboard's
The
for softball.
scoreboard would be for
The
softball.
scoreboard for softball is on campus, yes, ma'am.
I don't think the county commission expected the money to come back. They allocated the money for Central High School. I think that it's an opportunity to do something that many schools and many children will benefit from. And I think that you don't need to look a gift horse in the mouth in a way. I mean, I understand we've got budget in other areas, but this is never going to come up again that these things can be done. Do they need to be at all the schools? Absolutely. When they
Agreed.
built Spring Hill Middle, they put everything. They
Did
got
it right.
everything.
Did it the right way.
Everything. They did it the right way.
Did it the right way.
And so hopefully, and when we built Central High School, we wanted to do it the right way. But as you said, they said, wait. We'll see what we've got left over. And what a great job they did.
They did.
In providing those things and bringing it in under budget. So I think that's what the funds were appropriated for by the commission. I think they would expect us to use them to complete those projects. And so I move that we use the money, or I don't know how to word the motion. Somebody help me here. Not to exceed the money that was left over from the building program to build the necessary, I'm not even saying it right here.
To build, well, again, I want to utilize as much as we can. Let's just be honest.
To build.
I mean, you're looking at purple and gold for 31 years, so that's all I know.
Yeah, exactly.
So the soccer field, the tennis court, and the scoreboard would be the three that we would.
Okay, my motion is to utilize the fund to as many projects as can be completed for to complete Central High School.
So, Madam Chair, you're going to amend the construction contract then
Yes.
to include those items. That's what you're asking to do.
That was really on the tip of my tongue. I was just fixing to say
So
that.
we're talking about the soccer field,
Yes.
the scoreboard, and the tennis courts.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so amend the construction contract to add those items back in.
I so move. Is there a second? Second the motion, Mr. Beaver, second the motion. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Dudley.
I'd like to make an amendment to your motion that the tennis courts and the scoreboard have first priority.
Excuse me, amend the motion that the tennis courts and the scoreboard have first priority. Is there a second to that amendment? Seeing, then we'll vote on the motion, unless there's discussion. Okay. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Ms. Kinzer. Mr. White, I fully understand where you're coming from, and I
Yes,
think
sir.
this is a great need
Yes,
that
sir.
I would like to be able to support. I guess from a board standpoint, from this member's seat standpoint, I guess the thing that I grapple with is we've got a lot of needs in the county, and so.
But you have less needs the more you continue to use the funds that you have.
Well, I think there's a process. I mean, it's just like with the EMG process. I think as a board, what we attempted to do was try to do an objective process where needs were prioritized by staff. Not really, the board picking and choosing, okay, I think this need needs to be addressed before this need. And so it's really almost kind of a question of what place in the line it is. And so I fully agree that there's a lot of athletic needs that have been neglected in the county for some time. What we've been grappling with is just getting our basic facility needs caught up. Roofs, HVACs, those sorts of things. And it's been very difficult because I'm a supporter of athletics and I want to see some nice athletic facilities at all the schools, but it's just that's been the first prioritization is, well, let's try to get back to zero on these facility needs. Then let's start trying to tackle some of these athletic needs. So I do think the discussion needs to occur to start addressing some of the athletic needs in the county. But I think it needs to be a global, comprehensive look at all of the needs in all of the county, because it may be maybe $900,000 may be all that's available for all the athletic needs in the county. And so there has to be some sort of thought process of how do we best do that. Now, the county may elect, maybe they want to provide extra funding above what they've currently provided in capital needs for athletic needs in the county, and they may elect to do that. But the only thing they provided funding for us thus far is just for those very essential things of just trying to get caught up. So for me, it's not so much that I don't see the need, and it's not that I don't want to support the need. It's just more of trying to be objective and trying to do that in a global, comprehensive manner. So I will be voting against the motion.
Just to let you know, in 1961, when they built the old Central High School did not receive any athletic fields whatsoever. So we went from 1962 just until 3.5 years ago, and again, we've not received any athletic fields whatsoever. We built Spring Hill Middle. We did it right. We put everything with it. With Thorne, Cox got nothing. Okay, now they got a chance to also have something. If we vote no, again, we're back to nothing.
Mr. Pennings?
I know where you're coming from, Mr. White. I mean, I'd love to get a new soccer field. My granddaughter plays soccer for Central.
Also rugby now. Don't forget about our state championship rugby team.
Well, she doesn't
They're
play
going to play there as
rugby.
well.
She doesn't play rugby yet, so.
That's okay.
And also, I would like to know, why wasn't the tennis courts brought up when we had all the construction going on there? You've seen what a great result we had from the people that were building Central when we did the restrooms and the concession stand. You know, who's to say what could have got done if those tennis courts would have been brought up at that time?
We were also under the impression that we would wait to see what money is left over. And we were also kind of shocked when we saw how much money was left over. We weren't really expecting anything. So we're thankful that we did have funds available to do the things that we're talking about.
I lean towards what Mr. Bates said, and I heard what Mr. Williber said, but I also know what the county says, that money was supposed to go back to them for debt service.
Once you were finished building Central High
Once
School.
we were finished building Central.
We're not done.
Well, that can be a matter of opinion, Mr. White.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Thank you.
I agree, Mr. Pennings.
Mr. Beaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think we got some county commissioners here in the audience, and they can, I guess, confirm how this money was acquisitioned. And it's my understanding that it was the total amount would go for building Central High School, and if anything was left over, it had to be spent for Central High School, or it goes back to the county commission to go for its debt services. So, you know, they don't have to give us anything, but we got it, and we can improve Central. And what, four years ago, we all voted to make Central High School a showboat, and I think it's very, you know, it's very nice.
Oh, it's an absolutely beautiful building.
Yes.
There's no doubt. The event entrance people brag about every single day they walk in. We had the 1973 reunion this past weekend in there.
True.
Just amazed at what they could look at. What they
I
could
heard
see.
a lot of feedback
Yeah.
from that.
Yes, sir. And we're very appreciative of it.
Right.
We just feel like there's more to do.
Right.
And we're not being selfish. It's
True.
just that there's more that we can do, and we have that ability to do it.
And it will also support two, 3 other schools.
Exactly.
Yes.
Not just Central High School.
Yeah.
You're making a vote for Cox, Whitthorne, Baker, any for the community.
Right.
As well.
And so,
Who's like, okay, hers won't come on, and she's been pushing it for 10 minutes, so, here. Thank you.
Oh, it's gotta have some time, I have to be nice to it. Okay. I do this backup, but I agree with, Donna and David in that, there are other needs everywhere else. But am I correct that Danny Beaver just hit the nail on the head, that if it does go back, it is going back for that purpose? And since we do have it, that's correct, right? If it's not in use, period. And my rationale, which may not be correct, but right now we're working with the county commission, who is basically did not grant us the complete total that we were asking for in the first place last week with budget. Am I correct? Okay. So while we have this, it is of Joanna's opinion only that we should use it while we have it. And I do agree that there are even though I am hailing from Central High School.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Class of 73 is my mother. I do get it.
We missed her the other night.
She was there?
She was?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
She
I
was
missed her.
there. Mm-hmm.
She didn't take the tour.
She sent me some pictures. But I definitely agree that the county does need to address those issues of other schools, but because of the circumstance and the wording of that, I agree that if that's what they said and that's what our attorney is saying, that we need to do that while we have it.
Mr. Bates?
And Ms. Martin, I mean, you're tempting. I mean, but it is, I guess for me, it's, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, I kind of feel like we as good stewards, as managers of the taxpayers' money, I mean, we have an obligation to try to keep these projects down as much as possible. And we did our due diligence. So we, by electing to go with the construction management at risk contract, and that was to build the school. That's the contract that we entered into, was to build the school. We entered into a contract rather than bidding it out and worrying about, okay, there's going to be amendments and cost overruns. We did a different model to try that out to see if we could net savings. So here we have accomplished what we set out to do, and I just in some ways feel like we would not be accomplishing that goal if we save the money and then we just spend it anyway. So for me, from a fiscal conservative standpoint, it is where on the front end, you know, I want to try to manage these projects as much as possible. What I'm hoping is that the county sees that we are in good faith, doing our due diligence, that we are trying to manage these projects, trying to keep costs down. And when we say that there are needs out there, we are not just making things up. And hopefully,
and we're not making things
right,
up either,
and I understand that. And there are a lot of needs that I think we need to start addressing as far as athletic needs. I know some examples that I could give where kids are having to practice till 9 and 10 o'clock at night because they don't have a practice gym. They have one gym to run both middle school and high school basketball teams, girls and boys. So there's a lot of difficulties out in the county, and I would like for us to start tackling some of those difficulties. What I would like to see is if this funding does go back and it relieves the county as far as their debt service, that gives them a little bit of cushion that maybe we can go back and look at this. Like, I don't want to forget this. This is not me saying no. This is me saying I want to look at it globally. I want this to stay on our radar. I just want everybody, all principals from all over the county to say, okay, what are the needs? And then I want some guidance from staff as to prioritizing. And it may be at the end of the day, they may come back and say, Central's at the top of the list. And we ought to fund that first. And then for us to take that list back to the county and say, look, guys, y'all made a lot of progress on our facility needs. Let's start addressing some of these athletic needs that we have in the county and to provide some funding for that. So I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not this way.
I guess I understand that, but there's money in front of us, and 2 years from down the line, you don't have to worry about coming to Central High School first.
Right.
You can work on some other schools because we've got.
But you got to remember, I'm telling staff all the time, just because you got the money in the budget, don't spend it. And so what we're hoping is we actually watch our P's and Q's. We're actually able to return money back into fund balance and actually address some of these other needs. So I just don't want to be hypocritic if I'm telling staff. And I mean, as a board, we're encouraging staff, hey, watch the budgets. Don't, just because it's in the budget, don't spend it. Let that money go back. At the same time, you know, county, don't beat us over the head because we're being good stewards and we're actually saving money.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, Mr. Bates, I wish we could do that on all of our programs, what you just mentioned, but we don't. And we got a chance to do, to make a lot of improvements for Central High School, which will support a lot of students. And so, you know, I think now's a good time to do it. And so I'll be voting for this.
Again, my biggest concern with this is that we are using school funds to build something in Murray County Parks. I don't see that we have the right to take that money and use it in Murray County Parks. If Murray County Parks, they have a budget, they go before the commission just like we do. I'd like for them to give us a couple million and we could use it for our budget, but that's not how it works. And I just don't see how we can take those funds that we are supposed to give back for debt service and use those in Murray County Park, and then Murray County Park is going to charge us to use the facility. They're going to charge other people to use the facility, and they're going to make money off the facility. So it sounds to me like it's a Murray County Park investment, and I think that they should put it in their budget and go up to the county commission with that.
I don't have their money in front of me, but I'm fairly confident they're not making money by us, because I'm pretty sure that money's being used to maintain the facilities that we're using.
But
so I don't think they're profiting.
We were also told that they would, Central would have the first rights on it, but then they would.
But again, that's something we've not discussed with the park board about as well.
I'm just telling you what was told to us at our other meeting at the study session, that then they would rent that park out to other groups.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, we have Parks and Recreation represented here tonight. Maybe he could address what kind of money that the Parks and Recreation gets off of the school.
Mr. Dudley, excuse me. Okay, Wayne.
Thank you to the board. I can promise you recreation facilities are not a money-making venture, not by any means. I think Mr. White will tell you that the best deal going is the lease fee he pays for the football stadium. He mentioned that as we speak, County Commission just in the last few months approved $175,000 for new lights, $33,000 for fencing. That's all going into the stadium. Last year they approved $60,000 in bathroom renovations that we're doing throughout our park system, but the first place we're working on though is in the football stadium. 2010 spent $170,000 on bleachers at the football stadium. So I've just named off you know, roughly $400,000 worth of improvements that have been done since 2010, and that's not counting day-to-day upkeep of that facility. You probably add another, you know, if we count man hours, you probably add another $30,000 a year into that. And I'm talking off the top of my head, but 15% of the gate, 15% of concessions is what Columbia Central High School pays to Murray County for lease of that stadium. I'm going to say, depending on the year, depending on how well the football team does, how many home games they have, they probably pay somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 for the use of that stadium. So I promise you that these facilities are not a money-making venture. That we don't feel. I'm sure people will disagree with me, but I, as an employee of the Parks Department, does not feel that it's our responsibility to raise money, even though we try to when we can. But it's our responsibility to provide recreational opportunities to the people of this county. So it's Ms. Morenci, I promise you, there's never a facility that'll be a money-making venture.
And that's not what I was saying. That wasn't my point at all. My point was that who is going to be in charge of this field? This is going to be a Murray County Parks field, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then that's where it should come from their budget. That's all I'm saying. That if it's going to be, and you are going to have control over it, correct? Then it should come from your budget. And if the county commission wants to build this park in the county, then let them take this money and give it to you. And give it, that's just how I see it.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as I said earlier, I don't have any problem with the tennis court improvements and the scoreboard improvements and projects that are physically on school board property. I don't have any problem with that. My problem is I don't think I can vote for building on the county park property until we reach an agreement. As Mr. Woodward pointed out, there's a lot of negotiations now, and so there's a lot of things that are unknown. And I would like to have those unknowns answered prior to voting to build the soccer field.
Ms. Martin? Oh, excuse me.
Can I speak to Mr. Dudley's comment?
Yes, of course.
I think this is just step one. I think if you guys approve to move forward with this, I think the next step is we have to carry this to the park board and we work those things out before we move forward. But I think we had to start somewhere, and we couldn't start with the park. There was no sense in starting with the park board if the funds weren't going to be available. So I think this is step one, and I think you're right on point. There will be some type of agreement, but I think there has to be at least some type of commitment that we're going to move forward with this before we take the next step.
Ms. Martin?
Mr. Wolver, would it be appropriate if we table this to get more information from the park board, if this is a situation for information getting to us from them as far as negotiations that you're speaking of? Should we get that information, table this now, and come back to it?
Recall 20% of those funds go to Hewlett Spencer, so you're essentially holding up some funds there maybe, but if they're not in a big rush, I don't see that you couldn't do that. But until that gets finalized, those monies aren't going to get dispersed, so you're just going to be in a holding pattern while that takes place.
Can we get Jamie to speak to that then? Oh, excuse me, Stan.
Actually, Hewlett Spencer has billed us for all of the funds that they have, earned to date, and they have been paid. So they're paid to date on the but we're holding open the purchase order to see if there's any additional. So once you make a decision, then we would either hold open the purchase order or close the purchase order and be done with the project.
Mr. Pennings?
Well, you've all pushed pretty good, but have any of you talked to the county commission and see how they feel about us going back on our word? Because as far as I'm concerned, we agreed to send savings back to the county commission for debt service. Now, if we do that, I don't know how many pennies that will take off of debt service, but that gives them the ability to borrow more money in case we have another school project that we need. I'm seeing 3 fingers. That means it takes 3 cents off of the debt service. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, you know, I would love for the county commissioners to say, that's a great idea. Go ahead and use the money. But I feel that we would be going back on our word. And we're probably going to be hurting more schools than we're going to be helping because of the debt service. That's why I have a problem with this. And like I say, I would love a new soccer field, Mr. White. I know I caught heck from my granddaughter, but I'm sorry.
I just want my kids to be safe. That's all I want.
Ms. Parker, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I just got to go to a great open house at Baker. They did a fabulous job, so sorry for my tardiness, but that's what happens when you got little ones. They got to start school on Wednesday. I just wanted to say, if we're waiting to have all the I's dotted and T's crossed on anything that we do up here, we'll be waiting a long time, because that's just not the way that this works a lot of times. You know, we approved the purchase of land up in Spring Hill that wasn't actually in Spring Hill that needed to be connected to sewer, I think, just recently, or hopefully will be. So there's a lot of unknowns that come up when we have property that we don't know all the details when we decide that we're going to purchase it. I think our obligation is to make sure that we have facilities that support our students. And whether that's through a partnership with businesses or whether that's a partnership with the county, I think we should always try to pursue those things. And I think this board and previous boards have been very lax in looking at what we're actually agreeing to on a lot of this stuff. If we're going to have a tennis team and we're not going to provide those students facilities, then I'm not really sure why we're paying a supplement and why we're having a tennis team in some instances. But that could go down the list on a lot of our sports. I think we got a list today from Stan about transportation and how many of our students actually have to go off campus to participate in their sports. And I think that's something that we need to be very conscious of from a liability standpoint. We certainly have some liability exposure there, I would think, when you have a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds driving on the roads. And this is something that would make it to where some students at Central High School would have the ability to participate, and maybe some students that wouldn't have been able to participate in the past would then be able to because of the close proximity. And working with our county on something is something I think we should try to do, and something that we should have been doing for a long time, quite frankly. Clearly the partnership with Murray County Park on the football stadium, I think that's been beneficial. Based on what Mr. Lindsay has said, they've certainly invested in us, and I don't know what the problem would be in us investing in some property. It's obviously going to require some approval from the county commission before it goes much further, but this is just a saying that we want to pursue this. This isn't, I don't think this is a finalization of anything other than an intent. And there's plenty of time to work out a lot of these details, I think. All right. Seeing no other lights, any other discussion? And I think we're ready to vote on this.
It's not an amended, it's on the main motion.
Can you restate what the motion is for exactly? I don't want to state it improperly. All right. Does everyone understand the motion? So we have a 5-5 vote, I know that Ms. Powers is actually on her way. She too is in the middle of traffic over at Whitthorne for her children's open house. So,
Can we do what Ms. Martin said and table it till next month and,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I voted wrong. I hit the wrong key. My vote is no.
Okay. Yes. So that motion fails 6-4, I believe. 6-4. So we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay and Mr. White. Yes, Mr. Dudley?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the contract and allow the repairs to the tennis courts and the scoreboard to be made.
Were you able to get that motion, Ms. Shirley?
Shirley, go back. You're on the wrong motion. You're on the inside. Go back.
While she's doing that, can somebody give me a dollar figure for those two things? I missed it from the presentation.
Mr. White? Yes. What was the dollar figure on the, Mr. Moore?
Just this.
They have a motion to, do the tennis courts and the scoreboard.
Your presentation had the dollar figure on those two items. Thank you.
So that'd be a total of $198,000 for refurbishment of the tennis courts and scoreboard, softball scoreboard. Mr. Dudley made the motion and Ms. Kinzer seconded it. Is there any discussion on that, Mr. Pennings?
Vote is no.
Oh, you have your light on.
Oh, my light's on.
All right. Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion also fails. We will move on to the budget amendment for EESI. All right, everyone understand that? All right. Mr. Breeden.
Madam Chair, let me get caught up here. as you remember back earlier this year, and I didn't bring the exact date, you approved moving forward with the contract with Train for an upgrade to our lighting. It's basically a phase 2 of our energy improvement program with them. We were doing that funded through a loan through the Energy Efficient Schools Initiative with the state of Tennessee. It's a 1% loan repayable over 12 years. In order to actually fund that program, we pay Train, and when we pay Train, we get the draw from the loan to reimburse us for that payment. And so what we did is we did a loan from fund balance back in the spring. I think it was either March or April. You approved that. We had to close that loan out because of the end of the fiscal year. So we're asking to draw back that money, basically be moving it from fund balance to our 178 account, which is where we would pay for a project like this. And then at the end of the project, we would reimburse that money, come back with you with another budget amendment to move that back into fund balance. I know there were some questions for Ms. Gagliano about that, and she's here this evening to answer those.
Hello. I just wanted to give a little bit of input on the impact of this transaction on fund balance as we're moving forward into the new year. We have not closed out FY18 to date, and until we do, I won't have the exact figures going forward. But I've done some estimates using our cash flow model from last year and plugging in the new estimated starting point, and then using last year's revenues and expenditures by month, and took a look at the cash flow. And this budget amendment for $1,062,000 would actually hit in August, so we would be adding that to our expenditures basically because we'd be taking it out of fund balance. And then, so that would probably hit like mid-August, and then in a week or two it would be back into the account. So just to let you know how that plays out, it would leave our August cash flow dollar at $518,000, which is pretty close, considering if the revenues don't come in the same as they did last year, or if the expenditures are higher. So that's gives me some heartburn. And then in September, with that same transaction moving through and getting the money back, we're at a fund balance for cash flow of $289,000, which is even worse than the month before. So can it be done? It could be done, but it's going to be very close. And like I said, if revenues or expenditures are varied at all from what they were last year at this time, we could be having an expenditure freeze during that month. Obviously, we have to cover payroll. And then after this particular portion of the project phase is completed or satisfied, there's still $1.6 million left to be borrowed from our accounts to pay the loan, and then the reimbursement comes back. And that would hit in November, which we, at this point in time, do not have the money to cover that and have a positive cash flow at all. So I reached out to the county to see if we could handle this in a different way, because the process is kind of convoluted, to say the least, because the schools put the money out, and then we put in a request for reimbursement, and then the reimbursement is sent to the county, and then the county sends it to us. So I asked, can you not just pay for it and then be reimbursed for it? And the answer was no. So I've talked with Mr. Breeden, and he and I are going to work with the state and see if we have any other options on how to handle this. But you know, I support you going ahead and approving this, and then with the idea in mind that we will try to make this work. But if we can't, and we can't come up with another solution from the state, then I'll be bringing it back to you, because I just don't want to cut it that close. Anybody have any questions?
Ms. Gagliano, I appreciate you coming in and giving us some information. I was had some questions at the work session, so I appreciate you
Sure.
talking about this. My main concern was, I know you've got us, I guess, scared that we need to keep it like around 8% in fund balance as a healthy fund balance, even though the state minimum, I think, is 3%. So that's where when I saw this, I understand it's basically just a temporary type thing where as soon as we spend the money, then we get reimbursed from the state. So it's a very short-term window there, I guess.
Right.
But
But
I just didn't know about cash flow, and that's where I wanted some guidance from you on that, whether this is acceptable from a accounting and a cash flow standpoint.
Yeah, because with each, we have 2 payrolls a month, and there's like a 3-day span with each payroll, so we have to make sure the money's there 3 days in advance, and then of course on the 3rd day it starts getting pulled out. So so we have those windows of time where that money has to be in there in order to do the payroll. So yes, I do recommend an 8 to 10% fund balance. It's usually a 5% for cash flow and 4% for emergencies, and we don't even have the 5% for cash flow. So we're just barely over a 3% right now. So we have to be very careful on what we do. Don't want to make the headlines for that.
Well, do we have any wiggle room where we could defer this until, I think you said you and Mr. Breeden are maybe going to call to the state about, what other options there are?
Well, we currently have invoices from Train on hand of $1,062,308 due. That is past due. We were waiting to get this done to do that. And our anticipation was this money from fund balance, then as soon as we pay those, we'll get that money back from the state, which would go back in, and then we'll get another invoice next month. We won't pay all of it at the end of we'll pay it month by month. And so out of this money that we get from the state, we'd have enough money to pay the next payment. Then we'll get that back from the state. We'd have enough to pay the next payment. And those, typically we're getting that money turned around back to us within a week. Like Ms. Gagliano says, it goes to the county and we have to get the money from them, but they've been working with us to get the money turned around back into our account very quickly. But we do have that situation where we do have now, I haven't had to call from a lawyer from Train wanting to know why we haven't paid their bill yet, so the bills are setting. But these are 2 bills that we do have outstanding from Train because, again, we had the loan, we were proceeding with the work. There was no notice to us that we needed to stop the work, so we've continued on with that. The original project was scheduled to be due by the end of August, which they're trying to get done because there is about $75,000 in TVA rebates that we would have to have the work done by the end of August to get as well, which helped fund the project.
I got 2 questions. One for you, Ms. Gigon.
Okay.
I can't say your name right now.
That's okay.
Is that
It's fine.
500,000 you're talking about in, I think, October you said? Is that above the 3% or?
No, that would be, the cash flow altogether would be 518,000 in August and 289,000 in September. That's, assuming we get the revenue we did last year and assuming we don't spend more than we spent last year.
Okay.
Because we're starting out the year with less than half of the starting figure than what you started out with last year to plug into this model. So that's why everything's so tight. Now, once November passes and we get to December, we're good. It's just this first 6 months, and if I plug all of this in, the November balance is minus 625,000.
Okay, my second question is for Stan. And you did say once we pay this one bill, which we got to pay anyway.
Yes, sir.
You'll apply for the grant
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
that money right back.
Basically, what we do is we just have to send them a copy of the check. So we just got to write the check even before it gets to Train. The day we write the check, we email a copy of the check to the state. And once they see the check with the invoice, then they reimburse us. So, but they won't do that without a copy of the check that we've written to pay for it.
And then after
so
that,
and that usually is here within a week.
We'll be able to do it monthly after that to keep the.
Well, that's what we
the
would
checks
intend to
coming
do
in.
from these funds, but these funds would, obviously, these are the funds that she's referring to, the million, I mean, we would take that away and then we get it put right back.
Okay.
But then we'd have to spend out of that again, if that makes sense.
I think I'm catching on there.
Yeah, I know it's a cash flow issue, and again, yeah, timing of cash flow. And I will just add, this, I'm outside my lane, and as I often say in staff meetings, I try not to speak too much outside my lane. But prior to last year, we always did a loan in the fall because we never had enough cash flow in the fall to get through, and we would always have to do a loan from the county. But beginning last year, we stopped doing that, and so I'm not sure how that all plays into this, but always in the past, prior to last year, we had done a loan because we always got to kind of a cash flow crunch this time of year. This is because of taxes and the timing of receiving those.
But this whole project is going to have to save us money in the long run.
Yes, sir. And we have based our utility budget for this coming year based on about $200,000 that was projected in savings from these lighting improvements. So, and you know, actually, the loan agreement was approved by us and the county. So technically, you know, we don't owe the money, the county does, because we can't borrow money, only the county does. But we did an agreement with the county, we would pay it back. So the agreement is that we're to pay the repayment of it, but technically the county's the one who borrowed the money.
So it's not a question of the project at all. The project's great. It's not that at all. It's just the timing of the cash flow and just being able to have the money to borrow and then get back, and then borrow again and get back. So it's just that.
Thank you. Do we have any idea approximately how much fund balance that we're looking at in the next month?
Well, my estimates before were that we were going to start out the year at about 2.9 million. 2.889 is the 3%. So we were about 63,000 over the 3%.
Okay.
The last estimate.
And let's put it here where the majority of us can understand it. Do you run your own bank account that way, where you write a check and then try to beat it to the bank?
No.
Would you recommend anyone doing that?
No, but that's why I'm saying that, you know, we're gonna work together on how to get this done, and you know me, if we can't do it, I'm gonna say we can't do it.
Yeah.
So, it's just a puzzle right now that we gotta try to figure out together, but I will be the first one to say, I don't recommend this, let's let the bill be late another month or whatever we need to do.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Would it be any help if we worked with Train, we approached Train and worked with Train and did a portion of this?
Possibility.
And then
we can do that too.
And do it in smaller increments so that we're not
so up against the
right.
wall.
So if we could do that, and you know, I mean, we have a really good relationship with Train. Maybe perhaps they'll let us pay half of this and then come back and pay the other half. And if that would help, I'm not, I don't know that much about.
It's definitely something we can look at as well.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea.
Are you, then, if what our balance in fund balance, as you reported today, 63 million, are you then proposing we'd have to dip into our 3% to be able to do that? Wouldn't that take some, we'd have to dip into the.
It would be,
And that's what you're proposing.
it would be for a week or two, and then it would be put back, but then they're gonna have to use it again, so it would probably be something that I would have to talk to the state about, how, you know, because it's not like a permanent takeout and it's not coming back, but it's still affecting it, it's still taking it out, so.
It's $1 million we already owe, so, and from my understanding, we're gonna get the check right back on this. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this, so we can get the ball rolling on this.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Dudley. Ms. Morency?
I just had one question. Would this money be debt service to the county? Because I think I know where there's $947,000.
Yeah, the actual money that we're paying for this with, I don't know how that's classified. The repayment is debt service, and it's in our debt service budget. Once the project is completed, then we have to start repaying the loan. This is, and again, as Ms. Gagliano, as I spoke with the head of the ESI, I've built several houses in my day where you had to do a draw against your construction
Right.
loan. But here you got to pay it before they'll let you draw against your construction loan. And I said, how does that make sense? This is the government. So that's the answer I got is they won't loan you money until you pay for something, then they'll loan you money to pay for it. So, but that's what it is. We're just having to pay it so they'll loan us the money to pay for it. That doesn't make any sense, I know, but that's the way the government works.
Mr. Williver, I wanted to ask you, I know that we obviously have incurred the expense from a contractual standpoint. Do you have concerns if we are unable to pass this fund balance? But by the same token, do you have concerns about other contracts that we have that we potentially have to take out of fund balance? And from a logistics standpoint, if we're dipping below 3%, it's my understanding that we would have to have county commission approval as well as state. Is that correct? So is that going to delay this turnaround?
Yeah, I'll have to check with the state on that because I've never experienced it. I've never dropped below 3% or tried to use any of it. So I know that it's loosened up over the years as far as being able to do it if it's an emergency, but I will spell out the situation that it's a week or two and then it will be put back. So I'll find out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion does pass. It's 7-3. So we'll move on to our next item, the annual superintendent evaluation. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Bates?
Just a procedural note. I will say that I would have liked to have the state testing data prior to doing the evaluation. And so I would reemphasize to the board that we may want to take a look at our policy to move our evaluations into maybe the latter part of the year, maybe October or November, so that we have that objective data in hand. And I know that's very important for me. We have the subjective part of the evaluation, but I like to see hard numbers. And so just as part of kind of I will say that looking at some of the state data right now, I'm disappointed in some of the data. And so I would like to see some improvements on that. I know that there was some curveballs that was thrown as far as the testing this year to all the teachers. I mean, it was, the state kind of keeps fumbling the ball on that. So it is difficult to get good objective data on that. But I think that's, as a board, our primary mission is to further the education of our children. And so I would like for us to be able to have that objective data in hand to see how reading's going, how math's going, so that that can be part of our evaluation. So again, I just wanted to make that note that we may want to take a look at our policy to, because it is frustrating that the data doesn't come out until after the summer. That's when we actually have the data to see how the year is progressing. So just a little tidbit on that. I may actually, in our next meeting, make some proposed changes to our policy as far as that date and timing.
And Mr. Bates, I think that's something that we've talked about before, and obviously if any board member has a change that they want to propose to our policy, I think we're certainly amenable to that. With regards to the timing this time, it's, I believe, contractual that we have to do it in June, according to Dr. Marzak's contract. I don't think that forbids us from doing one in October or November or whatnot, but we, at this point, as long as Dr. Marzak's under contract, then we have to do it in June. So that was part of the reasoning. But I do agree with you, it would be helpful to have the objective data and not just the subjective that you mentioned. Mr. Pennings?
No, you stated about the contract, but I was gonna say if we move it, we'd have to amend Dr. Marzak's contract or do another evaluation besides the one in June.
And I think it's something, a valid discussion point to have as part of the policy discussion as far as making some changes. And again, I think it would be helpful for us to take a look at some proposed changes. If there's some contractual obligations that we have to do a evaluation in June, hopefully the superintendent would be amenable to making those changes. Otherwise, we could make a small evaluation in June and do another evaluation in October. I'm not sure whether the contract says that we're prohibited from having more than one evaluation.
I don't believe the contract prohibits that, so we could certainly look at that. If you want to work on language for that policy, I'm sure we can talk about it next month. Ms. Shirley will make a note. We'll put it on the board work session. Anything from any other board members regarding the evaluation? All right, we'll move on to our instructional low bids. Oh. It has to be approved as well. Dr. Marzak says it has to be approved as well. He's saying that the evaluation itself has to be approved. I don't think it does. Correct. All right, so we'll move on to the low bids, instructional purposes. Lenovo laptops.
I believe someone had some questions about the Lenovo. The Lenovo laptops are simply from, as you know, Central became a Title I school. Their committee met, and this was a result of one of their decisions they decided to purchase. So we're bringing those to you for approval. They'll be used in their, Mr. White can tell you more specifics about that if you want, but from what I'm understanding, they're going to be used in their algebra ACT prep classes. And there'll be laptops that will stay in those classrooms.
Ms. Morency.
Mr. Keynes, I just had a question on how, you said these were bid. Is it 3 bids? Is that how it has to be?
On that, if we have a by-board cooperative bid purchase, that's what we use, the same bid price that's approved by the cooperative.
Okay.
Let me bring that up.
Can you explain because I'm not familiar with the buy board
I think
cooperative?
Mr. Breeden probably would be more the expert on that.
Okay.
Didn't bring my computer, and I can't quote these policies per se, but when we are making a purchase, we have to follow the procurement laws of the state of Tennessee, which are also supported by board policy. Any purchase for us more than $10,000 either has to be bought through a public bid or using an approved cooperative purchasing group or piggybacking on a bid of another school district. There are approved cooperative purchasing groups. You approved actually last month for us to use by board.
Okay.
And there was one other, I can't remember what it was right off the top of my head, that we use. There's several that are approved cooperative. What they do is this is a group, and typically the ones we are by board is actually based on a group of schools that go together and bid this, and then they use the bid pricing for it. There are entities on the internet that you can maybe buy, probably, but you can't get a bid from them.
Okay.
Now, this particular, are we talking about the computers? We're talking about the Lenovo's, not the TIs.
Yeah.
So we did look on the TIs, by the way, and what's listed on the Walmart site that Mr. Bravetti referred to and what's listed by board, it's a different set of equipment. There is some additional chargers and cables and things that come with it that doesn't come with the Walmart one. So that can account for some of the difference price. The other thing is, though, Walmart, Amazon won't give you a bid. So you can go on every day and find prices, but you can't buy it because procurement laws limit you. So what we're doing with the Lenovo computers is the same sort of thing. We're using the bid that has been done through the cooperative buy board agreement. These items are put out to bid, and then the prices, they're done through the cooperative purchasing agency. Does that explain a little bit?
Yeah, so in other words, if I wanted to go to Amazon Prime, I use my Amazon Prime, and
You might be able to buy that product cheaper.
Okay.
You might be able to. I'm not saying that you
But
couldn't.
as a school district, we
But
could
as a
not
school
do that.
district, we can't go buy $10,000 more of them without doing a public bid, and they won't give us a bid.
And Walmart won't give us a bid.
No, ma'am, they
Okay,
won't.
so that
Yeah.
that answers that question. All
Yes,
right.
ma'am. Or at least when we put things out for bid, they've never submitted it to us.
And I imagine that same principle will apply with regards to the TI-84 calculators, because those are significantly more expensive than what you can find on Walmart or Google or lots of other places.
Well, again.
And I understand it doesn't necessarily have. Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Breeden, I guess in theory, under the cooperative bidding process, in theory, volume, we should be able to get a better price.
Yes, sir,
because
we
it's
should.
multiple districts working together to
Yes,
try
sir.
to bid things out.
Yes, sir, it is.
But I guess we could elect to.
We could elect to put everything out
bid
for
it back
bid.
out.
If we wanted to do a public bid for everything we did. Now, the other thing board policy says is we can use that when it allows us to save money in the bidding process. You know, at this point in time, we do not have staff to put those bids. You don't just say, hey, I want to put this out for bid, and you post it on. You have to list it in the paper. You have to put together a bid document. You have to have somebody who there's a certain amount of time that they can request that bid document. You have to do that. There's several steps that you have to do to process it. For instance, Murray County has a dedicated purchasing agent who they pay. I don't know what his salary is, but it's a professional salary. It's not a clerical position. Plus 1 or 2 clerks just to do purchasing. That's
Now,
all they
since
do.
we're unified, could we just send this over to them?
Well,
and have them
possibly. Actually, at the time it becomes unified, we will, because that becomes a part of their responsibilities purchasing. We will follow under their purchasing direction. So they will do that for us as a part of that.
Have you had any experience between the cooperative bid and then when we bid it out ourselves? Is it generally come
Typically, what we
less or
will do with the
more, or-
cooperative bids is we will search several sources when we choose the cooperative bid. We don't just say, hey, I know so-and-so's got this, so we'll call that one and just get that price. We try to search for the best cooperative bid we can find when we do a cooperative bid. So it's not just we just go say, hey, I know you can get on buy board, so we will try to do that. But we've never really had a situation where we bid it and then look for cooperative purchasing as well, because every item's different. You know, it's not like you, and most of these are not something we do every day, so we're doing it time and time again. So usually when we're making a purchase, you know, it's a one-time kind of thing.
And Mr. Gaines, I had some questions about how the title funding works. So I guess Central has a certain amount of dedicated funding that they're going to receive. Now, if they were able to save some money on this bid, it would still stay at Central, I guess. They would
Yes,
just,
sir. We would move that money back to wherever their school team designated they wanted it to go.
Okay.
We would, if that purchase came in less, and we were able to save some money, then that money right there would stay in their materials and supplies until they had another meeting, and if they decided they want to do a budget amendment, and then we would bring that to you, of course. If they were going to move it from, say, materials and supplies to PD or personnel.
so is there a lot of flexibility with the funding, or is there a lot of strings where they say, okay, you're getting this funding and it has to be used for these types of things?
They do have some flexibility. There are requirements. For example, they did an initial budget, and then it's looked at by us for the requirements, and it's also sent to the state, and they review it. So once like we were submitting to you tonight, which you approved in the consent on it, was a preliminary budget. Now the schools will go back and they will really fine tune it. We try to get most of everything budgeted and most of their what I would say big ideas, because you want them to go ahead and start spending that money right now because you want it to be used for the students this year. So we try to get all those big purchases done at the beginning of the year as quick as we can. What we don't know sometimes is as we get those budgets prepared, we don't know that final allocation.
Gotcha.
So
one other thing, as far as like the purpose of the funding, I guess, is to try to bring about improvements.
Yes, sir.
And I guess there's some oversight by you and your office as to whether they just don't, I guess the school doesn't come up with a wish list. There has to be some oversight that we're going to get some bang for our buck.
Right. They have to tie whatever they're doing to a specific action step. So if it's improving math scores or improving ACT, they have to tie those funds and what they're doing to that specific step in their school improvement plan.
Right. And so I'm asking you, is spending this amount of money on calculators, do you believe that that's the best use of these funds for whatever improvements are being attempted to be made?
I'll ask the school improvement team. I did question because, students do buy calculators, and their thought was that the students would have more access and they would be able to help them use those. But I can talk to Mr. White's here or some of his school improvement team here, and they can talk further about that.
Well, I'm asking you as the federal supervisor, do you believe that this is the best use of funding for that particular need?
I always try to, if there's something that sounds quirky with a team, I will go back and question them, and I do try to sit in on all of their meetings when they do make their plans so that we can resolve that. In my estimation, I think that, they'll be able to use those calculators more in the classroom, which will allow the students to be more prepared. Sometimes students, they don't have access to those calculators, they don't use them properly, and they're not able to make the right calculations on the test. So I think having access to them will be much better.
Okay. Well, and I'm just one board member, but I would like if you do get these requests. I do understand deferring to the schools and generally on the ground level, grassroots, they know how to best serve their school. But I do think as a board member, we have an expectation of seeing improvements, and so
that's right.
You certainly have that license to be able to, if you're getting these requests and you know that there's certain needs, and that's maybe not the best way to get the biggest bang for the buck, to push back and to say, hey, maybe we need to take another look at this. Maybe there's another way where we can start seeing some improvement in math scores or that sort of thing.
You're absolutely right. When we have those questions, we do get our consultants involved, and we do really look at that. We try to look at, where it's been done before. Was there success? Is it something that's evidence-based? And we do try to look at that if there's a question about, a particular school action step or purchase.
Mr. Atkinson.
I just want to make myself clear on this. This is federal grant, Title 1A. It's not coming out of our budget at all. on both Lenovo and the calculators, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve bids 19-002 and 19-003.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Kinzer. -003. You may want to add calculators after computers. All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion passes 9-2. We'll move on to item 9.2.3, West Interactive Services. This is for School Messenger. Mr. Atkinson.
Could I make a motion to table this till next meeting? Because we got till September on this, until after our budget gets approved.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Atkinson to table this. Yes, ma'am. And a second by Ms. Morency.
Continue it, make a motion to continue it, I guess, correction on this until the next meeting.
All right, any discussion? Ms. Morency seconded.
Recommend motion to continue, not table.
Mr. Moore.
I just want to clarify that there's not going to be any disruption in services if we do this.
Again, outside my lane, but let me, just because I worked with Ms. Doddridge to get this, and you approved in April at our time of annual renewal, this contract at $42,000 and something dollars. This was to add websites for the 2 new schools, and so they sent a new contract to add the website for the 2 new schools. I think the actual contract renews September. Do you remember, Kim? It's September's when it renews. So they were sending this and said, we'll go ahead and start working on the 2 new websites, but the contract renews. It's in September. I do not remember the date, but that's the whole, how this came about. But our contract, if I can get in the file here, I can find out the contract dates. It does renew on September 29th. So you have a contract now. It's just they won't start working on websites for the 2 new schools.
Any other discussion? All right, we're ready to vote on the motion to continue until the next board meeting. All right, that motion passes, so we'll have that on the next board meeting. Everything else from here on is an FYI, unless there's any questions on those FYI items. I'll turn it over to Dr. Marzak if you want to make some announcements.
Ms. Shirley, can you just click on the announcements? There we go. There's the announcements.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Pennings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.